you don't have someone looking, at your business and at your actions from above, kind of the bird's eye view, and showing you where your blind spots are and what you're maybe not paying attention to, where you could be perfecting your craft, where you're just completely dropping the ball. If you don't have someone that's able to kind of keep you in check and call you out on what you're not doing, then I think there's not as much room for growth.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?
Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Athena Brownson. Athena's redefining what it means to thrive in real estate. A former professional skier with, this says 11 surgeries, but I just learned it's far more than that, has changed her perspective and become one of Colorado's top performing agents. So Athena, like I said, I'm going to stop there. Your story is very interesting, but I want you to tell it. So first I'll say thank you. Thanks for coming on the show today, taking the time out to talk to me.
Thank you so much for having me. I honestly couldn't be more excited. I love listening to your podcast and definitely have a unique background, I would say. So let's jump into it.
Yeah, that's great. Let's hear your story.
Wonderful. So I was born and raised in a small community that, if you know skiing or snowboarding, you may have heard, Breckenridge, Colorado. My dad was a residential real estate developer and a professional skier.
Oh, wow.
Did I take the real estate part at the time? No, not at all. I wanted absolutely nothing to do with it because I was busy following him as vigorously as I could on the slopes. So I think I learned how to ski when I learned how to walk. I was about 2 years old. So I pretty much was born with skis on my feet. And I had a really one-sided view on I wanted to be one of the best skiers in the world from a very young age. And luckily I was in a community that facilitated that. Being in Breckenridge, we had one of the best terrain parks in the world. So I competed I was one of those crazy people that goes off of giant jumps and through the half pipe, which is why I had surgery so many times, for sure. Yeah. But from a very young age, I was surrounded by some of the most incredible coaches and mentors, and just a really incredible environment of support and people helping guide me through to be the best version of myself as an athlete that I could be. Like you said, I had a fair share of injury throughout my career as a skier. So I went pro when I was 15 years old, which feels like a lifetime ago, man. The injuries don't, but it does feel like a lifetime ago. And I skied about 300 days a year for almost a decade. And if I wasn't skiing, I was probably rehabbing a knee or a neck. I've had, I think, 9 knee surgeries, a couple broken necks, but I had the opportunity to travel all over the globe. We'd follow snow wherever it was. So during our summer, we'd head down to the Southern Hemisphere, hit Chile, Argentina, New Zealand. And again, I was surrounded by this environment of really incredible coaches and athletes. And I had kind of following in my father's footsteps. But what I didn't realize was the fact that this was a career that generally does not extend well into your, late 20s. So by the time I was 22 years old, my doctor looked at me and he started saying, Athena, I think you should think about hanging the boots up. You've done, I think at the time I'd had 7 surgeries. I didn't quit then, but he said, you're going to need a knee replacement by the time you're 30. So you should start thinking about what's next. And when I thought about what I wanted to do next, it's almost as if I had a complete identity crisis. So I had put everything into being an athlete, and I really did not have an idea of where I wanted to go in life. So I finished college, ended up getting a great internship that led to a job in interior design. And I picked that because my mother did all of the design for my dad's residential developments in Breckenridge. And I really enjoyed being a part of that. What I didn't enjoy at the time was the fact that there were more real estate offices in Breckenridge than t-shirt shops. So I really thought real estate was just a dime a dozen. I didn't think that there was much, I was the hater of real estate agents. I thought that they were all corny used car salesmen. I had a really negative connotation. Where I got that, I don't know, because we've always had really great relationships in the community with the realtors. But when a dear friend of mine sat me down and said, Athena, you're not feeling fulfilled where you're at in interior design. And I wasn't. I really realized that coming from an athletic background, and I think, there are a large amount of very competitive individuals in the real estate community, both athletes or whatever their passion was, that transfers really well into real estate. She said, you need to be an entrepreneur. You need to do something where the amount of work that you put in is the output that you're going to get out. You need something where there's no ceiling and the sky is the limit. And you love people, you love homes, you love design. Like, what are you doing? So that was kind of a big aha moment for me. And she just said, look, sit down with the owner of my company, pick his brain a little bit about real estate, see what you think. And if it feels like a good fit, I really think you would succeed in this. Now, this conversation was a little over 11 years ago. I ended up sitting down with the owner of her company, who's still one of my mentors today. And he was one of those people that just radiates human sunshine. I mean, he was so passionate about helping people, and he had such a clear vision of his why, and he had created an incredible culture, the brokerage that I ended up spending the first 5 years of my career at. I mean, he was very intentional in the way that he created that culture, and he created a collaborative culture. And I think so often when you get into real estate, it can be a very one-man sport, and it shouldn't be. I don't think that anyone goes to real estate school and comes out feeling like they know what they're doing. So really, he provided for me this beautiful environment that I was able to learn and thrive and flourish in. And after I sat down to lunch with him that day, I ended up quitting my job the next day. Or I say putting my 2 weeks in. I think it ended up being like a week, and I signed up for real estate school. I was going into my last knee surgery, knock on wood, and decided that was the perfect opportunity while I was recovering to get through real estate school. So I did that, ended up going, signing on to his team. And I just sat him down and I said, look, I am obviously new. I'm green. I don't know what I'm doing. Yes, I passed the real estate exams, but would it be possible for me to just follow you and be, you could kind of be my mentor and I'll help you with anything that you need. And honestly, this was probably the single best decision I ever made was following him, because we don't know what we don't know. And in real estate, there are so many moving pieces, so many shiny objects, that it's really difficult to grasp your bearings and really have an idea of where to be spending your time and energy. My girlfriend at the time said, Athena, you're the newest agent here. You should be here long before anyone gets here and long after anyone leaves. But what I didn't, quite comprehend at the time, until I really got some good mentorship under my belt, was how to actually be efficient with that time and not just busy. Yeah. I think it's so easy in so many of our careers to just be busy, and we have this hustle culture that you always have to be doing something. But really the idea of how can I efficiently and most effectively use my time is something that I learned in real estate from a very, early starting point, which I think was one of the biggest blessings that I ever could have asked for. So that's how I got into real estate, and it's been a really interesting ride ever since. So we can get into that too.
Are you planning a remodel or construction project? Overwhelmed by the process? Over budget? Extended timelines? Strained relationships? We are all too familiar. At Lark Construction Services, we help homeowners and business owners take control of their construction journey, from reviewing bids and contracts to catching red flags before they become costly mistakes. Our Clarity Audit is a one-on-one expert review of your plans, estimates, or current progress, giving you the peace of mind and a defined action plan to move forward with confidence. Don't let confusion lead to costly errors. Visit larkconstruction.com and schedule your free call today. Lark Construction Services, saving you time, money, and stress.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's a good spot because there's plenty here to talk about. I think I've had a few athletes on the show in certain sports lend themselves to younger starts than others, but I always find that athletics correlate with business and entrepreneurship really, really well because, and you sort of touched on this, but there's ultimately that performance-based reward, right?
Yeah.
Like you get something for like directly proportional to the amount of work that you put in. And so
exactly, I
think when especially you said you became a professional skier at 15, like you were skiing before that. I mean, it's like, if that is the way that you grow up, like when you're young, you grow up with that type of environment and feedback. Yeah, you get a little bit crazy, but you get very, very much, I think, in tune with performance-based reward. And it's like, and I mean, I never did professional sports, but I've always played in sports, and I turned out I had a similar mentorship situation with one of my uncles at a young age, where it was like it's just a simple thing, but I look back on it now and I'm like, he paid me by the day, not by the hour. And so if I got done early with what we needed to get done that day, I had the rest of the day. And so it was like, I think
that's wonderful, actually.
Yeah, no, it was like, and I didn't, at the time I was like, I didn't make that correlation, but like later on in life, I started to realize how much like just an hourly job, like with hourly wages, didn't make sense, at least for me. It was like, well, if I can do this much, the same amount of work in half amount of time, why do I have to sit here waiting for the rest of the day to end? And so
being busy, quote unquote.
Right. So it totally resonates with me, and I do think, sports are very much, they correlate with that well, because it's like, you're not going to get anywhere in sports if you're just sitting around kind of wasting time. Like you have to, you're still working very hard, and you're probably still spending a lot of hours, but those hours are meant to be productive hours. So it definitely resonates with me, and I think explains why people in athletics, I think, often gravitate towards that, kind of entrepreneurial space. You hear about professional athletes all the time. Like they don't go get a W-2 job afterwards. They're like, I'm going to own a business, or I'm going to do, this kind of thing. It's like, because you spend your whole life looking at everything from a lens of effort in equals, reward out. So you followed that path. I would say that you had exposure to the real estate world through your dad and your mom, I guess, helping with the design on these. So you had that exposure, but it wasn't maybe immediately the direction that you went. But I think somehow, to me, I feel like all of that ties together.
Oh, definitely.
Pretty well.
And, looking way further down the line at where I am now, I'm actually developing properties with my dad. And it is the most fulfilling wonderful thing I could have ever asked for, because it's being able to, you always wonder if working with a family member is something that's going to be fruitful or healthy, you know, and I always correlated working with my dad as being freezing on his job sites in Breckenridge, walking, framing and watching drywall, and it was never something that sounded like a glamorous position. And not that I was looking for glamour by any means, but I was not looking to be cold on job sites, that's for sure. But fast forward to where I am today, and being exposed to that environment and seeing the way that my father truly did embody an entrepreneurial spirit, and the way that he, you know, really valued time. And just like you said, I mean, the idea of getting paid by the day and not the hour, I feel like is absolutely brilliant, because you're promoting efficiency in that way. You're promoting actually having some sort of balance too, because if you get your work done, then you're able to move on to what it is that you want to do. Now, does real estate really promote balance? I don't think, I think that's the constant struggle that we all face, because you do have to have a little bit of a psychosis, I think, to really thrive in this industry. And I think that's where athletes really, really do well. And something you said that really, really struck was, the idea of performance-based almost merit or performance-based accolades, because that is something that the older I've gotten, I've had to become more aware of, and not tying my entire identity into how I was performing in my career as I was as a skier, because that was completely tied into one thing. And it's very difficult to separate the two. But I think in order to have some sort of semblance of a healthy mindset, you have to be able to separate yourself from only getting your self-affirmation almost from performing well. But at the same time, I think athletics does lend, the lessons of resilience and grit and perseverance that you really need in this industry. And it teaches you how to overcome adversity and overcome challenges that come up. And as we all know, that in this world of real estate, we're constantly inundated with different problems, and it really is a lot of problem solving, and being able to kind of separate yourself from the problem, so you can act objectively on behalf of your client and make the best possible decisions. And those are all skills, that I really believed I learned from coaching. And for me, one of the most important pillars of my business today is still having coaching and mentorship. And I think, again, I've been in the industry 11 years now, and I still, every single time I have 2 coaches that I meet with, and every single time I'm learning something new. And I think we live in this really beautiful time of having a huge access to information, whether it's listening to podcasts or audiobooks or having coaching. I have coaches that are all across the country, and I generally rotate every 6 months. So to be able to have, this access to mentorship and access to people's stories that have done it prior to you is such a gift that should not be taken for granted. And again, that's something that I really believe was instilled in me through athletics, because if you don't have someone looking, at your business and at your actions from above, kind of the bird's eye view, and showing you where your blind spots are and what you're maybe not paying attention to, where you could be perfecting your craft, where you're just completely dropping the ball. If you don't have someone that's able to kind of keep you in check and call you out on what you're not doing, then I think there's not as much room for growth. So, again, whatever it is that someone's passionate about, I think you have the ability to transfer that passion into your career. And then when you do have that passion and that drive, it does make you want to be more efficient with your time. It makes you want to perfect your skills. It makes you want to really be the best at what you do. And I attribute that for sure to athletics and probably my father.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it all just ties in together extremely well. The mentorship, and you mentioned that first broker that you worked with, and how you directly approached him and said, I want to follow you around and all of that, and in contrast to the friend who said, oh, you want to be the first one in and the last one to leave. Okay, but if you're the first one in and the last one to leave and you don't know what to do with those hours, like that's not actually beneficial to anybody. You're not.
Not at all.
So you have to take. It's not. You still have to do the work. Like it's having a mentor is like, here's the mentor, the coach, whatever you want to call. Here's the guardrails.
Mm-hmm. Here
are the things that you need to do to kind of stay on track, and also like here are some additional things to help you excel. It's just so. It's so parallels sports, like the athlete. It's like you can. And I said I didn't do professional sports, but I played sports all my life. I ran track in high school. I ran track in college. Those, even just the difference, like seeing the difference between the levels, right? Like there was high school. It was like I didn't really have to train. I just happened to be a fast kid. Like that was it. Like it was like, you're a fast kid, go do this. And then it was like, okay, well, I guess I'll do that in college too. And then I went and I was like, oh, here are all the fast kids from the whole country, not just my small town and I was like, I'm no longer a fast kid amongst these guys. Like I got to work.
Yeah.
And so it's like you realize you realize, okay, like what I was doing before isn't enough, but also like then it takes coaching to figure out what it will be to get you to the next level. And it's like it's always, I can just go on and on because I love the correlation between sports and business and like whatever business, whether it's real estate or anything. It's like these are the ways to, it's like don't waste time. And find someone who's done what you want to do and have them help. Like it's just like
it's almost keep it simple, stupid. It's like 100%. We overcomplicate things so much, and piggybacking off of what you said, it's it really comes down to accountability and discipline, because you can be told things over and over again about what you should be doing or how you should be working, how you should be utilizing your time. But if you're not actually implementing those things into your day-to-day business and into your life, and having some sort of accountability for, if you are doing these activities or if you're not doing these activities. I mean, first of all, the only person you're really hurting is yourself. And I think that, most people that go through athletics and into any business do have that intrinsic nature of wanting to succeed. And thus, when someone gives feedback regarding how you can be better, it's something that you're going to take to heart and implement. However, if you don't have checks and balances within that system and a level of accountability, then you're not actually going to be, you're just going through the motions. You're not actually utilizing that valuable information. And these are, I have very simple tools for tracking my activities that I still use to this day. And I print them out at the beginning of every week to fill out, what are the activities that I need to be doing every single day in order to keep my business from having these huge ebbs and flows that we experience, based on the economy. It's like, how can I take out as many variables as possible and keep as much consistency within my business as possible? Well, it's by executing the basics really well and with consistency, and consistently, reviewing how you're using your time. I mean, I think I do a time study quarterly. I take a week of my schedule, and I I like to do things by hand still. For some reason, it really sticks in my brain a
Yeah.
lot better. So I'll write out everything that I do each hour for a week. And then at the end of the week, I'll go through and highlight in green what my green time was. Where is my money making my highest dollar per hour? Because as independent contractors, as entrepreneurs, that is the area that we want to be spending the most amount of our time, because it's our highest dollar per hour. And then, this was the most difficult part for me was the yellow items that I should probably be delegating, things that needed to get done, but were probably not things that I needed to be spending as much time on. And coming from a one-person sport as a skier and being an only child, I always had this mentality that I could get everything done myself. But the reality, especially in today's day and age, I think that there's no such thing as being able to get it all done on your own. We have to be able to collaborate and to delegate. And real estate can feel very, again, very lonely, very much like a one-person sport, but it shouldn't be, because we all have such different skill sets, and we all have our own gifts and the things that we should be spending time on and shouldn't be spending time on. And oftentimes I don't think we even realize what those activities are until we're analyzing where our time is going. So I do the yellow and I understand, okay, maybe these are some things that my operations manager can take over for me. And then there's red time of, Athena, you completely are wasting your time right now. This is not efficient. You need to be aware and not do these activities anymore. And I think this is a really valuable exercise for anyone to do as often as you need to, because it's really, it feels more than ever like time is just flying by. I have no idea where the year went. The fact that we're recording this in mid-August, it just blows my mind completely. I feel like I blinked and the year we're getting through it pretty quickly. And if we don't have an awareness of how we're spending our time and that intentionality behind it, that we can keep checking in on ourselves, then really we're not going to thrive and succeed, or we're going to burn out. And I think that's something in our industry that is so common, probably in your last life as a doctor, as a vet as well, because there's just not enough hours in the day. And if you're not very intentional with how you're using that time, and it's going to be challenging. And something that has really, really made me hone in on how I can be a good leader to my own team and how I need to be utilizing my time the most effectively is that right when I had hit my stride in real estate. So I was about 3.5 years in, you start getting that, okay, I've got deals coming in, I've got my systems. I know, I really thought I was doing great, and I was doing great, but I definitely did not have as much intentionality. And I started to have all of these really weird illnesses coming up. It was right after I had another neck surgery. And as I was recovering, I started just having all these very strange symptoms. And fast forward a couple of months, and I was diagnosed with Lyme disease. And Lyme disease pretty much took out my entire immune system. I ended up with multiple autoimmune diseases, the worst of which is constantly attacking my nerves. So my life went very quickly from being a very high performing athlete turned very high performing real estate agent to barely being able to get out of bed some days. And the value of time when you're not able to perform at your highest at all times, it becomes so critical. And I think this is something that applies to anyone in life, really, whether you're a single mom and you're juggling a real estate career, or whether you're a team lead and you're constantly putting out fires for everyone on your team. For me, it happened to be illness, but I had to become very aware of how I was utilizing my time and my energy, because if I wasn't, then I would either crash my body and end up not being able to get out of bed for a week. And B, I did have a very finite amount of time to get my basics, my tasks, the things that had to get done accomplished. And I really quickly had to learn how to delegate. That is when I started to build a small team, because I couldn't do everything on my own. And that was kind of the aha moment for me of realizing that if I didn't start offloading things from my plate, that my health was going to continue to deteriorate, and that I wasn't going to be able to get better. And it definitely took me, a while to grasp that. But it's safe to say that I spend probably about a quarter of each year in the hospital getting plasma transfusions for the last 7.5 years. And when your time is actually, taken in a way that you physically cannot get things done at a certain extent, it makes you so much more aware of how you're utilizing that time. And that's really, again, where coaching has come into play for me, because it's understanding what I should be doing, what I should be delegating, and how I can be more effective and efficient.
Yeah. I mean, so much good stuff there. And I'm sorry you're dealing with that. I've never personally experienced Lyme disease, but I come from New England, where it's actually very common, and
Yes.
hear about sort of the I see what it does to dogs, and I know can be very debilitating in people as well. But a couple of themes there that we've talked about on the podcast in the past, but just so important, and to me, just I think pillars of kind of, I don't know, being success and what, but one is accountability. Use that word a couple times, and I think that is where the coaching comes in. Another very simple example is just I have a trainer. I'm not a professional athlete. I'm now just an old former athlete who has things that hurt. And if I didn't, I could go to the gym, but I wouldn't probably do the same things that I do and work through injuries that I've had since training with him. And you just wouldn't, it's very valuable to me, so much so that the thought of moving away from the trainer I have, or him moving, is a little scary to me, because I'm I think at that point my body just falls apart. I don't know, but
our heads fall off.
Yeah, exactly. You start to lose limbs, but it's extremely. Thank you, Casey. Sometimes I think he listens to this podcast, but the point is, there are places in your life where you can insert that accountability through coaches, trainers, mentors, whatever you want to call it. But then you touched on that, time tracking, the intentionality that you have of, kind of really looking at how you're spending your time. And in the it's a thing that is that's been a really hard part of the transition from W-2 world to entrepreneur world, because in most of our lives, school, grade school, high school, college, job afterwards, most of the time, you're kind of told what to do and where to and when to do it, and it's not, you don't actually have to think about how to spend your time yourself. And so when you move away from that and you become a business owner, you become an entrepreneur, a real estate agent, whatever it is, now you actually have to decide, you're the boss of you. Yeah. And it's cool. It's really cool. You get to decide what your time gets spent doing, but then you also have to figure out, not only do you get to decide that, you're also responsible for paying yourself, your employees, your, like, there's other things that come along with it that are maybe
stressful.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. I mean, there's a lot to it that goes with that, but that's why the intentionality becomes so important. And if you're, doing time audits, I really got very intentional about schedule, to the point of, like, not just work or going to the gym, family, like all of
You
the
have
things
to be.
like all of the things that are important have to get on the schedule, because otherwise,
Same.
if it's not on there, it doesn't happen. And it's like there's no, it's just making those shifts in your life and prioritizing how your time is spent. I think back sometimes to, like, before I owned businesses and had kids, like, I must have wasted a lot of time.
I think about that too.
Because
like,
I'm
wait, what? I had free time?
I just, like, I don't know what I did. I really don't know. Like, I couldn't tell you. I mean, I could probably think of some things, but I'm like, I don't know how I wasted all of that time that I've now structured so much. And the reason why it's also important is for what you described, is things like loss of health, like things like loss of, whether that's your own, someone you love, like, there can come that moment in your life where it actually all matters, not just because you say it matters. It matters because that's what your health or someone else's health is telling you. And so it's like
100%.
You might as well, I mean, hopefully it never happens. Hopefully, like, we all live in perfect health until forever. But, like, that's not the reality. It's like, some point you have to deal with those things. And so if you start making those changes and those adjustments of accountability and intentionality before you actually have to, it's going to get you through that stuff a lot easier. It's going to make that,
Amen.
So it's just like that's the stuff that I get so excited about. Like, I'm not excited that people have health problems. I'm excited.
I get what you mean
about, like, talking about what that really means. Like it's really, really, we should really be grateful for our health, right? Like, there's not much more important than that. And then, so how do I preserve it? And that's why time's important. Like, that's
exactly.
it. And like, you're a perfect example of this. So, I mean, your story is very inspiring and interesting to me. So thanks for sharing everything.
Of course. And it's something that kind of popped to mind as you were talking is, you don't, like you said, in real estate especially, there's always something to do. There's, we could work ourselves 15 hours a day and there would still be things to do. So if we're not extremely intentional about how we're spending our time outside of real estate as well, like, are your workouts on the calendar? Do you have lunch breaks? Do you have reminders to drink water? Do you have, do you need to go to the chiropractor? Whatever it is, family time, family date or date night with your spouse, whatever it may be, if you don't work these balance points into your schedule and hold yourself accountable to them just as much as you do work, then that work-life balance, or the attempt at work-life balance, is something that's not going to be attainable. And what I've really learned is, life never goes to plan. Like, they have that saying, if you tell God or the universe what your plan is, they laugh. And I really believe that, because of, I was the epitome of health and wellness. And I took my health very seriously, and I was very, very disciplined about how I took care of my body. But I also worked myself really, really hard. And I didn't necessarily give my body as much time as it needed to recover from things. And what I've really realized is no matter if it's, a health issue, or say you're going through a divorce or any form of adversity, if you don't have a solid footing in life prior to the storm hitting, and the storm hits when we least expect it, and adversity, I always say, we all have our own version of adversity, and that doesn't mean it's any more or less valid than someone else's. We all have different challenges, but if you don't have your footing, then it is so much easier to get completely swept away from what your why is and why it is you do what you do. And I think the saving grace for me has truly been having found real estate and having a very strong why behind why I love to do what I do and why I am getting out of bed in the morning. Because when you're fighting your own body, when you're battling illness, everything inside of you is saying, just stay in bed. You don't want to do things today. And to a certain extent, you need to learn to listen to your body. That's something that I've absolutely had to learn. But I also firmly believe that when you put yourself in a headspace of more abundance, in terms of I'm going to seek, I'm going to get out of bed today because I get to help this person. I'm going to get out of bed today because I get to do what I love to do. That is going to put you on such a better headspace and such a better mentality, and get your mind off whatever adversity it is that you're going through, even if it's just a challenging real estate market that we're all experiencing. If you get out of bed that day with purpose of, okay, I'm going to accomplish A, B, C, and D because it's going to allow me to assist more of my consumer, my client, in reaching their long-term financial wellness goals. Like, we have the ability in this industry to absolutely change lives. I mean, it's one of the single most important transactions people make in their life, and it's extremely stressful. And there's a lot of emotions that go into it. So to be able to be kind of honored with being able to be someone's guide through that is something that, I certainly will not take for granted. And I might have prior to having health issues, because it was what I did. I could operate and I could do as much as I wanted to in a day, and I was the Energizer Bunny. I look back at how my schedule used to be, and I almost feel like it's a completely different lifetime, especially as a skier. I would get up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym before hitting the mountain from 8 to 5, and then go back to the gym from 5 to 7 for dryland training, and then probably do something social and get up at 4 a.m. the next day and do it all over again. I mean, the idea of that now sounds absolutely impossible. But really, adversity is an opportunity for us to lean in and really figure out who it is that we are and what's important to us. And the amount of growth personally and professionally that I've learned through going through challenging times is something that I don't know that I would be the same version of me, and as evolved of a version of myself had I not gotten sick. So understanding that, when we're going through challenging times, like a difficult real estate market, it's really an opportunity to lean in, get more creative with what it is that we're doing, become more aware of the impact our actions are having and what's working and what's not working, and focus our energy into something positive, because that's, at the end of the day, what's going to allow our character to grow and allow us to be the best versions of ourselves. So kind of reframing the way that we see at challenging times and difficulties in our lives, and understanding that those are really formative times in our lives that are going to make us a better version of ourselves. And at the end of the day, that's really what you want. So for me, it's really reframed the way that I approach everything I do, and the way that, I have gratitude about the small things, because there are so many things in our lives that we do take for granted, and that we should be giving thanks for. And man, I'm so thankful that I found this career, because it has been what has kept me consistently looking ahead and looking through. I get 4 plasma transfusions a month, like I said, and those are extremely difficult. And it's very hard not to want to just, shut down and cocoon completely. But if I did that, the mindset and the loss of enthusiasm about life and what it is that I'm doing each day, and keeping my mind off the fact that I don't feel well, I think that negative mental state would deteriorate my health more than anything. So real estate's really been a godsend for me. And I think it has the ability to be that for many people, just because there's so many different ways to approach this business.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that you also just transitioned perfectly into the what is your why section of this. You kind of answered, I think, but I want to give you opportunity if you want to expand on that anymore.
Yeah.
But you probably said it better than I could in bringing that up. But I think that's, I mean, everything you just said. I think it is to me the whole point of kind of this podcast, and why the why resonates with me is because of this. It's because of you hit that hard spot in the road, whether that's a health problem or a difficult real estate market or whatever it is. At the end of the day, the easy thing is to quit.
Yeah.
That's the easy thing to do, is to quit. And so there has to be something that is so compelling to you to keep going and figuring it out, basically. And like you said, getting creative, doing what you need to do to, kind of carry through the hard times, because then the good times roll back around. And it's
Exactly.
So I'll give you the opportunity to expand any more there if you want, but you already did a really good job. So I didn't even have to ask the question.
I'll just add one thing. Well,
Sure.
I may have listened to your podcast a couple times.
Great.
No,
I appreciate that.
The idea of your why is something that I'm extremely passionate about too. And for the reasons that you just said, I think we all need to have that inner purpose, and that the reason that we get out of bed every day. And apart from what I already said in terms of being able to really guide my clients through one of the biggest financial investments of their life, or that in itself is to me one of the greatest blessings. But to piggyback on that, something we brought up earlier was, yes, I am also in charge of the livelihood of my operations manager and my transaction coordinator. And I'm responsible for mentoring the people on my team. And I've been really, I've learned the hard way, as many do, but I've been very intentional about how I've created a culture within my little team. Mm-hmm. And to me, there's nothing more important than culture. And when I look at the people by my side, there is absolutely nothing that I would not do for these people, because they would do that for me. And they've shown up for me when I'm in the hospital. They show up for me when I'm not able to. And so for me to be able to give back that effort and provide a community and a culture that we're all supporting one another and helping each other grow is so incredibly valuable, and something that I feel so grateful for every single day, because I couldn't do what I do if I didn't have the right people around me. So I know that if I'm not, being extremely intentional with my time so that I can be the most effective. And if I'm not constantly looking to improve my skill set and really, be an example of how can we get creative in a down market? What is, the art of showing up, like simply showing up when you don't necessarily feel like it. Because when we're all going through challenging times, there will be a voice in your head saying, just stay in bed or stay home, no matter what. I mean, it's just there. And we have the power to override that. And to me, it's like, if you have the right people by your side that you can count on and that they can count on you, as, to a certain extent, obviously there's certain times they know that I'm not going to be able to show up. And in that case, they're going to take over. But having that culture around me is just as much of my why as helping my clients. And honestly, I say clients, but when I think about, the people I do business with, 99% are from my sphere. So I'm doing business with people that I care about already and that I have amazing lifelong relationships with. And these are relationships that I want to continue to, feed and help them to flourish. And if I'm not showing up or I'm not, communicating well or facilitating a team member to show up when I'm not able to, then I'm not, that's not conducive to creating a long-term relationship. So I think the why is really in creating and fostering intentional and authentic relationships.
Yeah. We could do a whole nother podcast episode on culture, the business
right?
culture, and creating the right environment. But I love what you said about kind of the team and just allowing them to thrive in almost become an offshoot of you, that kind of and let them sort of flourish in those roles. So I think that's just a fantastic approach. Well, Athena, this has been fantastic. When people hear this and they want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yay. I would love to connect with anyone, so please don't hesitate. I would say my website, because it has all my socials, my phone number, my email, so I don't bite. Please feel free to say hello. And my my website is www.athena, Athena Brownson, Brownson, realtor.com. So you can find my socials on there. I put out a video every single day on Instagram with like a little real estate tip trick, and would love to assist anyone in any way I can.
Perfect. Well, we'll definitely have that in the show notes so people can find you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think there's so much value in looking at things from almost like an intangible aspect with the accountability and intentionality and all of that we talked about. So thank you so much for being on the show today. I really do appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. And like you said, I could talk to you all day. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Folks, make sure you connect with Athena and please like, rate, and review the show so we can continue to get more great guests. As always, thank you so much for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?